What's going on, Crypto Crew? Sean's coming back at you. Going straight into it. This is an important video. We're going to be talking about what the Federal Reserve is going to be doing with interest rates and how this affects markets. We're going to look back in the charts. We're going to look back at history. If the Fed's to cut, will the Fed cut? But whenever they do, how does that shock the markets? So what can we expect? The Federal Reserve is widely expected to keep its benchmark interest rate steady at its current range of 5.25% to 5.5% when it announces a policy decision Wednesday. So what does this mean? We see that the Fed rate has just been in this range for quite some time now, since September of 2023. So if we look at this and analyze this under a microscope by looking at Bitcoin dominance, SPX, and the Bitcoin price chart as well, what do we anticipate? So first, we've said before, this could be a rounding top, but if we zoom into this a little closer, looking on the weekly, we see that we've got exhausted around this 54% range. Right here, this is a bearish candle right here, right here, right here. All these exhaustion levels. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 different times it got exhausted. Now, this is one thing you got to pay attention to. Look at this horizontal resistance. We broke through this and now came back and back tested it, not once, not twice, but also back tested the bull market support band. The RSI, zooming out, looking at the chart, is still putting in higher highs and higher lows as well. Could we see another leg up for Bitcoin dominance? And what does this mean? And then if we look back in the charts at Bitcoin dominance, the last alt season that we had, which was right here, when Bitcoin dominance tops out, it doesn't mean alt season happens right away. It really took almost, when it topped out last cycle, September 2019, and then it didn't really, alts really didn't rally until December of 20 for that 4 or 5 month window. That was the massive alt season. So remember, so it topped out around September of 19 and didn't really see the alt rally till December of 20. Let's look at the interest rates. So if we go to September of 19, look at this right here. When the Fed first started to cut back in the bear market for crypto in 2019, went from 2.4% from July to August of 2019. But then look what happened. We went down to 1.5, traded sideways into the year, and then ultimately bottomed out almost to 0% by April of 2020. So this right here is what initiated that bull cycle from 2019. Look, there's no coincidence here. From July to August of 2019, that's when they first had the cut. Well, look here. Right here, we had this peak in September of 19. So this could have been where you diversified as soon as you seen that Fed pivot. And if you just held from September of 19 over the next about May of 21, so you're looking at roughly a little over a year and a half. If you held for that 18-month window, that's when you could see alt season. Now, where are we at right now? We're seeing just sideways pressure, sideways rates. We haven't seen that Fed pivot yet. So let's look at June 2019, July 19 to August 19 in the SPX, see what happened. When we had this pivot here from July to August, markets didn't move right away. July to August of 19, you see August had this retracement, but we had some more steam in the tank, and then we ultimately had markets meltdown because of the pandemic pressure here. But we did have this run up when the Fed initially cut in TradFi. Now in Bitcoin, we went on this crazy rally. It was a bear market rally from July 19, and the Fed pivoted, and then look what happened. So the crypto markets risk on assets melted, while we seen TradFi from July 19th have a rally up before ultimately melting down for the pandemic dump. So it doesn't always necessarily mean that the crypto market's going to just instantly come just full speed ahead. But then it did bottom out. This was a black swan event, and then ultimately had that rally to the upside after the Fed cut right here. So it cut in July of 19, and it took from July 19th until really April of 21, which was almost 2 years, 1 year, 9 months, until we seen this ultimate peak rally. So looking at the federal funds effective rates, it's expected to trade sideways with this upcoming FOMC this Wednesday. So what does that mean for Bitcoin dominance? So once again, let's look at July time frame, July of 19. The dominance peaked out as soon as the Federal Reserve interest rates cut. That's in this area right here. That's this blue line. And then we traded sideways before falling off a cliff. So A, B, C, this was the peak. That's what this blue line was, is when the Fed cut in 2019. Now, that was 2019. That was the most recent big cuts. So could we look back at the 2017 bull market to see, okay, look what happened? Did something ignite this back in August of 2015? Well, we can look at the federal funds. August of 15, we were in a almost zero interest rate environment for here. So that's why the market got extremely euphoric in 2020. Bitcoin's peak was relatively around right here. And then they introduced, the Bitcoin futures, as far as trading, and then it was bid against, and that's why that $20,000 peak, stalled out and then ultimately went to a bear market. But then look what the Fed aggressively did. The Fed, from that 2017 peak, aggressively started to tighten some more before they then ultimately cut rates again. So this is aggressive tightening here. This was a 2022, 2023 bear market. What are we looking for? We're looking for this next Federal Reserve cut. Because looking at this Bitcoin dominance, the Bitcoin dominance still is an uptrend. The trend's your friend to the end, and you gotta look at it. It's up and to the right. There is some confluence right here. We did think this was going to be a rolling top, but zooming in, if we zoom into what we just showed you, we showed you that this could be some type of just wedge pattern that's looking for a breakout right here. We got the breakout, back test. This could be a double bottom out. The level to pay attention to is the 55.9% range. But if we look at a technical target for this, this could go, just measuring for the candle bodies and the breakout, this could take us up to roughly 58%. So if this is looked at more like a flag pattern, maybe this is a flag pattern, this could be looked at in a different manner, different fashion. This can be pulled up to here. The way you would measure this, we come in here, trade sideways, and it would technically be probably one of these lower ranges right here, potentially right here, or up to the most recent retest, which could be here. And that would take us up a bit higher, which would take us up to almost the 60% range at 59.3, 59.5, almost 60% range. So basically, if this has a rally to the upside, this is another 6-7% swing potentially for the Bitcoin dominance. Could the Bitcoin dominance reach up towards 60%? That's potentially in the cards based on what we see. There is some confluence back here. You see this traffic here. There's traffic up here, which is within that 58 to 61 range. So 60% could be what's in the cards. Now, this is just something that we're just showing you with the markets because you want to look at your overall portfolio in Bitcoin valuation. So what we're paying attention to is this Federal Reserve's rate. We're trading right now on a plateau, the same where we were right here. From October of 2007 to really, we had this pivot, Fed pivot from July of 2007 to August 2007. We went from 5.26 to 5. That's when they first started to cut rates. So if Bitcoin and crypto weren't around back then, but let's look at the traditional markets to see what happened in July of 07 to August of 07. Let's look at the SPX. Let's zoom out on the charts. From July of '07 to when they cut, look what happened. We had a meltdown. The market melted down, but look what occurred. A crazy bull market in the years to come. And every time we've seen this pullback, these could be little micro Fed tightening sessions. But you see when we're at these similar levels, around the 5 range, which is where we are right now, this is almost identical to here, and the Fed cut aggressively from July of '07 down till December of '08, almost down to 0. Look what happened. December of '08 was right around here. A few months later, we then bottomed out and then went on the most massive bull market from the bottom of the SPX around $700 up to where we are right now, currently around almost $5,400. So are we going to see an event like this in the market? And if so, the only thing we can really pay attention to in the crypto markets is the most recent time frame where we had a cut while Bitcoin and crypto were around. And once again, we cut from June of 2019, which was the bear market in crypto, to the bottom, April of 2020. So we went from 2.4 down to ultimately 0. And this caused the markets to rally. Looking at Bitcoin and crypto, they started cutting here and it melted down to here. We got euphoric in the market right now. This was a euphoric run, but as you see, pullback, a major, massive pullback, then a rally. So, in saying that, what occurs when we see the Fed pivot? Will the Fed pivot sooner rather than later? Could we get that pullback? Could we actually see a pullback? If we look here, and could this be that triple top that everybody was fearful of? Now, look here, you just got to connect the dots. Like, this could be, major, massive resistance. Look here, we had this pullback here. And why did this occur in April of 21? Let's look back at the federal rates. April of 21, the Fed announced hawkishness. But look at, why didn't the markets fall right away? So there's no initial shock when the Fed gives their stance. The same way when they started to pivot right here, we didn't really see markets rip until this cut season was over. So the Fed's being hawkish, saying that they're going to change their stance and start to raise interest rates towards April to June of 2021, then what happened when they start to raise? They started to raise aggressively, and they announced in November that they're going to raise aggressively in 2022. So looking back at the market, look what happened. November of 21, when 2022 hit, the markets then fell into a bear market. So could this interest rate cut cause these markets to rut, to fall back? Could we get that pullback down to the previous support ranges, which would be around this level right here, the mid 40,000s? Could we see this? If we saw this, this then once again solidifies what? It solidifies a macro inverse head and shoulders pattern. So we could see this right here play out like this and then come back up to the previous resistance, and we've showed you this technical target. So ultimately, short term be bearish. If this pullback happens, this is a buying opportunity once again. Now, if this occurs, where's this taking us up to? This takes us up to over $300,000 Bitcoin. Now, does this mean this is going to happen in 2025? Not necessarily, because if the Federal Reserve starts to cut, at some point this year, look, you got to look at the effects. When did the market turn around once the July cuts of 19 were had? Let's go back into the charts quickly. The market turnaround didn't happen until March of 2020. And then you've seen about a year of bullishness. So it took about almost 9 months for this to play out in this fashion here. So is this going to be what's occurring? Let's look at this pullback here. This pullback here was roughly a 50% pullback. Now, not saying that we'll get a 50% pullback, but we have a technical target short term on Bitcoin of about $80,000. So if Bitcoin short term runs up to 80,000 with its last hoorah, could we then see the Fed cut, and then could we get a 50% pullback from this level? If we did that, where would that take us back down to? That would take us back down to macro level support around this $45,000 range. And once again, this would be that massive inverse head and shoulders pattern. And let me readjust my technical target, because the first one I told you was incorrect. So let's just extend this, because what we're doing here is just connecting the peaks here. We're connecting this peak with this peak. Okay, so this technical target, if we came up and hit this in the short term, let's just draw this more in scale. Okay, so we drew this more to scale. And why is this important? Because we actually wanted to hit these candle bodies. So if we do come up here and hit these levels, this puts us around the, depending on when we hit it, if we hit it within the next month or two, that'll take us between $80,000 and $90,000. Could we see this playing out? Most definitely. We could see this playing out, and then if we get this retracement down to the mid 40s, then we get that macro inverse head and shoulders pattern. And now where the technical target would be if this played out in this fashion. So you got to go from the swing low to the neckline. This white line would be the neckline. Keep this in mind. So we just got to pull this up. So if we came up, once the Fed started to pivot, say the Fed pivoted this fall, and then we sort of traded sideways, came back down, going into the new year in a downtrend, having that reversal pattern. Look at here. We could come back down, ultimately bottom out, and then come back up. And then this would be a massive bump and run potentially to have a continuation to the upside. But this shows you this massive inverse head and shoulders pattern. We have to measure this line now from this pullback to here. Now this is the elongating cycle process. This could be 1, 2, 3, 4. This could be the fifth leg, and this could stretch out. This could take a long time. This could be that macro fifth leg we've showed you and talked to you about. But if this gets pulled all the way back to here, where is this technical target now taking you up to? Because remember, this trend line is increasing in time. So if it does something in this fashion, say we peak out by the end of August, and then we have a retracement, and then look what happens here. We would see a $500,000 Bitcoin price target. That takes us up to 500,000. This is what the Bitcoin bros are seeing. We could see this run up, and then we got to look at the Federal Reserve interest rates. When we see that cut, that's when, you can wait a month or two, but you can look at the Bitcoin dominance. We showed you here when these cuts occur, look what happens. The Bitcoin dominance stalls out. So could Bitcoin have that last rally up? And could we actually peak back up to 68,000? That could be actually in the cards for Bitcoin, believe it or not. We could go up to 60 to 70% before we ultimately then see that rip of the altcoins. So that's not going to happen overnight. Once again, once we peaked out, it took from August of 19 all the way till May of 21, which is well over a year and a half. It's about a year and 8 months. So keep this in mind. We may not be out the woods yet. People are calling for an alt season. An alt season will happen. But could it stall out a little bit because of Bitcoin dominance? And one thing to note, if we see an Ethereum ETF, the last time Bitcoin had it, or when Bitcoin had its ETF, what happened? At the beginning of this year, the Bitcoin ETF was released in around January 10th. We had a retracement. It fell, but then it ripped afterwards. That's what caused this massive influx of money to come into the system. So this could be a multi-year, within a 5 to 10-year window bull market. You know, this could be your last chance, but this right here could rally up, hit this upside. It could wick up and kiss this perfectly. Then we could get this retracement going into the end of this year. So we might not hit 100,000 this year. You know, the Bitcoin bros have called that, and we were wrong. We've been calling about 120 to 140,000. If this plays out, this will psych everybody out once again. And there'll be a lot of pain right here, a lot of fear, a lot of blood in the markets. And then we'll get a bottom out, rounding bottom, and a continuation going into maybe mid to late 2025 into 2026 and beyond, because this would act in the same function as the SPX when they had this dump here, and it's just been going up and to the right over time. So the big boys are here to play, but what's your guys' take on this? Do you think that this scenario could play out? We come up 80 to 90K, get that retracement? This video's been pretty long. We had to bundle this up in a package for you because this is very important, extremely important. So with this, what do you think? Please leave your thoughts and comments below. I'm Sean with the Bitcoin Bros. If you guys like this content, go ahead and smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and show us some love. We appreciate the support. With that, that's all I have for you today, and I'm out.